Hi, my name is Ricky Floyd, and this is my project, A Financial Dilemma, which discusses the enormous debt that the country finds itself in after the Revolutionary War comes to an end, and the reasons that that debt comes about. So basically, at the end of the 7 Years' War, where everyone thought there was going to be prosperity and they'd be able to move into the lands in the West, in reality, there's recession and Great Britain asserting its authority over the colonies. So you have the Currency Act of 1764, which expounded on the Currency Act of 1751, in which there was supposed to be no bills of credit issued by the New England colonies. The Currency Act of 1764 affects all colonies. Then we have the Sugar Act of 1764 and the Stamp Act specifically of 1765, specifically the Stamp Act of 1765, which throws a tax out there that is supposed to be paid in sterling, hard money from England, which is essentially unavailable. So you have a lack of specie in the colonies, specie being hard money. The most common specie out there is Spanish mill dollars, but they're illegal. You can't pay English taxes with Spanish mill dollars. So everybody's out there, attempting to deal with this recession and trying to conduct trade in commodities such as sugar, rice, and tobacco, since there isn't any money to be had. And the problem with that issue is rice, a bag of rice in Virginia might not be the same as a bag of rice down in Georgia. And so there's big discrepancies between how much these are worth. So as the colonies are moving closer and closer towards an actual war, you have the battles of Concord, Lexington, and Bunker Hill, which militias are fighting, and the Congress realized that they have to fund these militias in the defense of the colonies. So they decide to print $2 million in currency. And this is about a month before they named George Washington as commander of the Continental Army. So they're going to get some money going and try to arm and fund these armies. Arm and fund the army, arm and fund these militias. So they print $2 million in paper currency that is printed right on there. It's supposed to be payable if on demand, payable in Spanish mill dollars. So if I have a $40 continental currency note, I should be able to turn it in for 40 Spanish mill dollars. Well, that wasn't going to happen. Congress didn't have $2 million in specie to pay these if somebody had made a run on the Congress with their money. So that wasn't out there. Or on the bills, also printed on the bills, was that they could be traded for like amount in gold or silver. Well, Congress didn't have $2 million in gold and silver either. What they were depending on was written into the vote to print the 2 million in paper currency was the states were supposed to give money to Congress that would amount to $3 million over time. So Congress was going to kind of make a 50% interest on this 2 million in currency, which would cover the currency, but that didn't happen, and so Congress just kept printing more money. Let's print more. So they vote to print money 10 more times, a total of 11 printings of continental currency to go into circulation. 2 of those printings would be recalled because England had decided that they were going to counterfeit some of the money that the Continental Congress was printing to undermine the war effort. So Congress found out about this and recalled 2 of the printings. So if you had any of this money, all of a sudden that was worthless because Congress recalled it. So, and every time that Congress printed money, the value of the continental dollar was going down. And it would tank to the point that the Congress was only going to pay you $1 for every 100 continental dollars that you had. Since the states weren't paying up, Congress also tried to do a lottery. lotteries were very successful early on in the colonies to raise money. So they tried to do it on a national level, and the each person who would buy a ticket or to buy into the lottery, the adventurers, that's what they called them. You were an adventurer. Ah, they couldn't get enough adventurers. There was no adventurers out there buying into the lottery, so the lottery was a huge failure. There were four separate classes of lottery, and it was just. I think I read somewhere that they might have made $100,000 on this. Women were out there attempting to raise money during the war. Okay, so all told, by the time that Congress quit printing money with the 11 printings, they had $241 million plus out in circulation. Okay, the only time that the things would start to get better was in 1777 after the Battle of Saratoga, and the French decided to come in on the side of the colonials. The way you've got is the French coming in and giving equipment, and there's loans out there, and ships and men, and then the Dutch come, the Netherlands comes in, Spain comes, money's coming from Spain and the Netherlands, and things start to get, but things don't get so much better that there isn't any debt, because there is plenty of debt. In 1784, after the war was over, and the continental currency was just it was basically had no value whatsoever. Congress submitted a statement of debt. Now I've read this thing and it's very difficult for me to really understand it, but it says the way I read it, there's really a total of $12 million in debt. Now I'm not quite sure how that works out when they printed $241 million in currency. So they're paying the local farmers for their wheat, or they're buying cows from somebody for the army, and they're after they've done all of that, they've devalued the money. So if they bought $100 worth of cows, they're only going to give $1 for them cows that they bought. So I mean I think that's how the $12 million comes about, due to the fact that they devalued the continental currency. So finally, they finally deal with the debt after the U.S. Constitution is out there for us, because the U.S. Constitution gives the Congress the ability to levy taxes. They couldn't do anything about levying taxes. That's why every time they printed money, they wrote into the journals that the individual states were going to give this amount of money and this amount of money and this amount of money. So if I print 2 million, you're going to give me 3 million, and it went on and on like that. But that never happened. The states didn't do it, and Congress couldn't levy their own taxes. But in 1790, they had the Funding Act of 1790, which kind of took care of a lot of this debt. And in addition to that, they sold all of the foreign debt. All of the foreign debt that the government owned, they sold to investors. So the investors actually made out. Investors made out with the foreign debt, and then all they had to deal with was, at that time, was the domestic debt. And things really kind of got under control after that point. But before that, starting all the way from the 7 Years' War and the lack of something to back the money up, and the continual printing of money, just made the situation incredibly bad for the United States until the U.S. Constitution came about.